Boss told me it was time, so we gotta go. Mark is like, Ian, stop chatting. Let's move. Welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. We're a welcoming community for seekers of all types. My name is Reverend Ian White-Marr, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of you today. If this is your first time, or if you've been coming maybe just a couple of times, I'll be out circulating in coffee hour, which is where we do our sacrament after this. That's a joke. We don't actually do that here. There's no sacrament. But we do coffee. We hang out. We talk. Please come say hello. I'd love to meet you. And hello to our people online. About a third of our congregation is online. Hello, thank you for joining us. We always love that you're with us. We offer children's chapel for members of our community who are in the 4th grade and younger, and that's taking place in the Carriage House. And if your baby is with you, it's always welcome in the sanctuary. But if it's feeling like a little fussy for you, there's a nursery right down the hall, and everything is always piped in, so you can hear what's going on. Now, we've made a couple of small changes, and I know that is like one of the most beloved words here, right? We've made a couple of small changes to the order of service, and that was because some of the parents requested that we move some of the ritual up a little bit so there's more interaction for our youth before they go out to their classes. So what we've done is we've moved the candles up to a little bit earlier in the service, and the offertory is actually going to start happening right now. So you're going to see these baskets go through, and what we've done is we've separated the offertory from the lighting of the candles so that when you're walking up in that meditative space, you can really be thinking about like what it is that you're putting intention to, and as we go into that sort of guided meditation, you can start taking their money. Feel free. There you go. Just do it. I think she's saying 20s, 50s, 100s this week. It's a good one. Our offertory this month, the whole month of January, is split with Rising Hope, which is a faith-based organization that is helping individuals rise above homelessness and poverty on the Route 1 corridor. So we do that every month. We sort of split our plate with an organization nearby, and it really helps us extend our mission as well. A couple of short announcements. Bell Choir rehearsals are beginning for Easter. And so if you're looking at the choir and you're like, oh my God, they're so amazing, they're so intimidating, I want to do something less intimidating than that. Bell Choir is a great way to get started. You especially, so intimidating. And we play bells a couple times a year. It's sort of our big holidays. If you want to find out more, you can talk to Mark Zimmerman right there, right after the service. Finally, and this will never happen again. I swear to God, this will never happen again. But next week, coffee hour is canceled. I know. I'll be providing pastoral care a little later. But there was a mix-up with our wedding organizer planner, and a wedding rehearsal or something like that got booked, and Derek needs time to break down this room and set up this room, and we need the parking lot. So that will never happen again, but Tammy and I found out about it a little bit too late, so we've taken care of it in the future, but as of next week, we'll have to soldier on without coffee. Our lay minister today is Isabel Arnold, and wrapping us up, we have a special announcement from the head of our nominating committee.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Sosa. I'm a member of this congregation, and this year I'm the chair of the nominating committee. And you're not having deja vu. I was here 2 weeks ago making the same announcement. So just so everybody's familiar, I want to announce the nominating committee this year in alphabetical order, and you can stand up if you're in the chapel. Sonia Bloom, Linda Bohannon, Brian Lounsbury, and Marianne Martz. So we're having thank you. I thank everybody for their service. We are having a table talk, and here's Brian, sorry, we're having a table talk session in the Commons during coffee hour. We've been asking people for the last couple of months to really think about serving. This coming year, we most specifically have 3 board positions and 3 nominating committee positions to fill. There are always committee positions and program council areas that need help, get involved. So please stop if you have any questions, if you are interested in serving, and if you want to recommend someone else serve, please stop and see us at the end of service. Thank you.
Feel free to recommend other people. Totally. Without their knowledge. All right, I think that's it. Why don't we begin our service?
Our chalice reading this morning is All of Us Are Beautiful by Thomas Rhodes. We come in a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some of us grow in bunches. Some of us grow alone. Some of us are cupped inward, and some of us spread ourselves out wide. Some of us are old and dried and tougher than we appear. Some of us are still in bud. Some of us grow low to the ground, and some of us stretch toward the sun. Some of us feel like weeds sometimes. Some of us carry seeds sometimes. Some of us are prickly sometimes. Some of us smell. And all of us are beautiful. What a bouquet of people we are. And now if you would rise as you're comfortable and able and sing hymn number 1029. 1029. Love knocks and waits for us to hear.
That wasn't part of it?
I forgot I'm supposed to do this. Will you join me in the reading of our covenant, which is found in the back of your hymnal or in the order of service? Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant, with each and with all.
Our meditative hymn is number 146, Soon the Day Will Arrive. As we close this hymn, we begin our period of candle lighting, and you're able to just come forward and light as you feel able. children will smile, not wondering. invite you to extend the meditation, the prayers that were brought forth, the joys and the sorrows that knit us together as a community. Maybe you find yourself in your seat, connecting to your breath, the warmth of the room, the small, subtle sounds with nothing out of place. Perfect, just as it is. Please join the choir as we sing our children to their classrooms. If you know the words, join in, otherwise they're in the order of service.
Have you ever made a pinch pot? You know, where you just use your hands to pinch and form a ball of clay into a bowl? Maybe in school, a long time ago. Yeah. I remember always being disappointed because mine would be lumpy and bumpy. I would try to make them really nice and smooth, perfectly round, but no matter what, the walls would be thinner here, thicker there, and the top would be a little lopsided and lumpy. It was really frustrating. One time, something told me to close my eyes and create the pot just by feel. Is that better? Okay. A bit of a risk, since I wouldn't know until the end what it was turning into. But okay, what's the harm? So I took the lump of clay, molding it into a ball and tossing it hand to hand, aiming to make as perfect a sphere as I could. With my eyes closed, though, I had to rely on my hands to feel where the bumps were, to smooth it out, where the lopsidedness made it unbalanced. Once I was happy with that sphere, I started working it into a pot, pressing into the center and enlarging the sphere as I pinched the clay outward. Again, I wasn't peeking while I did this. I worked the pot around and around with my eyes closed, allowing the clay to move my fingers, telling me where the walls were thicker or where the rim wasn't even. That turned out to be the best pinch pot I'd ever made. It wasn't perfect, of course, but it was far better than any of the others I'd made otherwise. My eyes had been deceiving me, or rather I had chosen to believe what I could see and ignored what my other senses were telling me. Closing my eyes was my method for changing what guided what I created. I obviously needed to, since my pot prior to this experiment were all wonky. My visual controls were misguiding me. In order to get closer to my goal, I needed to listen to what the clay was telling me. Can we try something here? An experiment with us? If you and your neighbor are willing, place your hand on their arm or shoulder. And if you prefer, just sit with your hands gently resting together, if you want. And close your eyes and let your hands be still. Notice what your hands are telling you, what your ears are telling you. The goal here isn't to let all of those just flow past you. Really take note of them. How much more are you hearing, feeling, noticing? In the spirit of my pinch pot experiment, I'm trying to be less controlling, less I know what I'm doing, and listen more carefully to hear those bits of knowledge that are all around me. It's in the serendipitous aha moments where I hear something that's new to me, that a path towards a goal becomes a little bit clearer. That might come from a family member or a friend, a trusted colleague, you, or even a lump of clay. Thank you.
So I realized, actually, as I was stepping up to the podium, I was like, oh, this sermon requires a bit of prior knowledge. I just made an assumption from you guys. How many of you have seen Star Wars? Okay. How many of you remember it? Okay, good. All right, that's enough. We'll be able to go on with this. If you don't remember it, you can ask questions from your neighbor. So in 1977, which was like yesterday for most of us, but not all, there's a couple of wee ones in here. In 1977, George Lucas released his best-known movie, Star Wars. And despite some questionable acting, it became maybe the most loved movie of all time. Right? Sure, there are other people who will put other movies on their best of list, but there's really something unique about Star Wars because it captures the story of the human spiritual pilgrimage. It's the story of becoming who you are supposed to be in better, broader, more epic way than really any other movie. And there's a distinct moment in the movie Star Wars that hurdles Luke Skywalker onto his journey. It is both brief and oddly unemotional, perhaps implying the inevitability of his call. And, I wrote this line. Does anybody remember? That's a trick question. Don't worry about that. I'll tell you what it is, because that's a silly line. Does anybody remember the movie line that I'm thinking about? Sometimes, Ian. It's the moment when Luke returns home after meeting his new mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he finds the charred bodies of his Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. Do you remember that scene? Right? Yeah. Now, if you remember what was leading up to that, Luke was having a frustrating time in his life. His best friends had left to join the Rebel Alliance, but his aunt and uncle had asked him to stay on the farm one more year. They, unbeknownst to Luke and to us, had been charged with keeping him safe, keeping him out of the sight and influence of his father. Luke was deeply unsatisfied with his life as a farmer because there was something inside of him that was stirring, something that was calling him to become who he was meant to become. But he would not leave his aunt and uncle. So when they were killed, there was nothing left for him on Tatooine. Everything had been cleared away, and the only thing left to do was to follow his journey. Now, it's an odd moment in the movie. Here there are two people who raised him, essentially his parents, and we were allowed sort of briefly to see their charred skeletons, which is perhaps the most gruesome scene in the whole movie. And it's peculiar to me anyway, because really what happens is he mourns for a couple of hours, and then he turns to Ben and he's like, all right, I'll go with you to become a Jedi like my dad. And most of us, if we had seen the charred bodies of our parents, would be in therapy for years. At very least, we would not be speeding off to an adventure later that day. But it's a movie and they need to move the plot along, so there's that. But it's also more than that, because Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, from a storytelling perspective, they're symbols. They are symbols. They are symbols of the final attachment a person has before they let go completely. They are the heavy weights people carry that keep them from following their call. These attachments show up in our lives as fantasies we have about our security, our own limitations, our sense of legitimacy, and they're the things that keep us from following our call. Some people don't even believe that they are called, but you are. Each of you has a sacred purpose. When Luke's friends left to join the rebel alliance, we know that his Uncle Owen asked him to stay behind to work on the farm. And we know there was a conversation, an agreement to stay one more year. And Luke talks about this, he's frustrated, and we see him blame his uncle for keeping him behind when everybody else was going off to lead their lives. But this is not true. This is not true. It is not Uncle Owen's fault. It is not the fault of the attachment of the symbol, right? Luke stayed behind because Luke stayed behind. That's the reason. It's his responsibility. It's true that his uncle didn't want him to go, but only Luke could make the decision to stay or to leave and follow his journey. No one forced him. And this is what makes the movie so relatable. We, too, each of us, have stayed somewhere, in some relationship, in some job, long past the time when we should have left. That's my calling right now. Saying, Ian, pick up. I'm coming, I'm trying, I'm getting there as hard as I can. I got so many attachments. And sometimes, we say it's because another person has asked us to stay. Or perhaps we think we don't have enough money saved, or perhaps we're afraid that we'll never find work or love or meaning if we leave. But none of us stayed in any of those situations, the ones we stayed in too long, for another person or because the timing wasn't right. We stayed because we stayed. We talked about this a little bit last week. This is what Arjuna, our hero in the Bhagavad Gita, when he sat down in his chariot and didn't want to make a decision, this is what that's about, right? These stories are timeless and always relevant, whether they appear in the great spiritual classics or in contemporary cinema, because they address the most fundamental question of humanity. Who am I? What is the purpose of my life? This is the most important part of understanding our dharma, our calling, right? No one else keeps you from ever following your call. We make excuses about it, but it really is us. Only you, only me, keep ourselves from following our call. Everything else is an excuse. We know this is true because we have lived it. There have been times in our lives when we have not followed what we felt was our calling, what God was calling us to do, because someone else didn't want us to do it, or we didn't want to until one day we just did. One day it was almost like the easiest decision, and then we wondered why we waited so long. After Obi-Wan Kenobi rescued Luke and the droids from the Sand People, they returned to his house. And Obi-Wan gave Luke his father's lightsaber and invited him on a journey to Alderaan. And this one I will ask you. Does anybody remember, and it's okay if you don't remember, but does anybody remember what Luke said to Obi-Wan Kenobi? It's such a great line for our culture. I can't go to Alderaan. I have too much work to do. Holy smokes. If that's not the voice of an overproductive culture, right? Here is a young man dying to get off Tatooine, allegedly, and he learns the story of his father, who is a Jedi Knight, and he's given a lightsaber, which is awesome, and he's asked to go on an adventure and save a princess, and he says, "No, I have too much work to do." There are always excuses, so many excuses, and I don't say this lightly. I say this tenderly, because there's a cost, right? Following our calling is not always easy. Actually, it's never easy. It means leaving behind so much of what you know, so much of what gives your life meaning, like the boundaries, the comfort. Even if we're uncomfortable, it's known, which is a form of comfort. And there are many people in the world who would rather live within very small confines of what they know than rather than follow what is calling out from within them. I mentioned this last week, and I believe that this is one of the great sources of suffering and frustration that we see in our world. People are just not living into their lives. Luke Skywalker's calling is more epic than most callings. He goes on to become one of the most important people in the whole galaxy. Not many of us have a calling in this order of magnitude. But comparing our calling, the magnitude and the importance of our calling, to the magnitude and the importance of another person's calling is just another excuse not to do it. We are not all called to be Jedi Knights, but we are called to something. And this doesn't mean that we don't feel some sadness when we finally decide, to cut off the other choices, when we finally decide to engage in the Dharma of our lives. There are always excuses until the moment when we just can't take the excuses anymore, and we walk out the door of that comfortable little room to figure out what awaits us. Sadness is natural. You're leaving something behind. You're leaving something you know, and perhaps something that you really love. Something that may even have been really good to you at other times in your life. It's natural to grieve even as we open the door to a bigger world. Some of you know this so well, what I'm about to say. Even the worst divorce, after the final papers are signed and there's a sense of relief that comes over the two people, even after the worst divorce, there is some grief. Because once, those two people loved each other, and that love has died. It's sad, and it's time to move on. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are metaphors for attachment in life. And perhaps we might say it's terrible that they had to die, right? For Luke to get on to his call. But sometimes that's how life is. Sometimes we have to burn the small room of our making. Sometimes we have to just burn it all down just to get out of our own way. It's unfortunate when this happens, and we might wish it were otherwise. And yet we all get there as soon as we can. When this happens, it is possible that regret follows us on the path. I only wish I'd done this sooner, right? I could have gotten sober at 35. Why did I do it at 50? We got there when we got there. Why did I do this degree? Why? Doesn't do anything for me now. I don't know. If only I'd paid attention to the signs, to my gut, to what God was telling me. Don't listen to that voice. It's just the voice of fear trying to turn you back, trying to get you to not follow through on leaving the small, comfortable room. It's the voice trying to keep you trapped in the past when all you really need to think about on your journey is where you are going, where God is calling you to. Where the divine, whatever is moving through you is calling you through. And then to go do it. Excuses and regret are not part of the calling. They're just distractions of the insecure mind and the timid spirit trying to knock us off our path. It's not like the journey won't have mistakes. In so many ways, the journey is all about mistakes. and then still moving forward. But it doesn't have regret. To understand the sacredness of your purpose in life is to understand that the divine is working through you within a larger field of purpose, where your role is critical to others as they realize the sacredness of their purpose, which is why I believe in congregations. I am realizing myself as you realize yourself. I need you just as you need me. The I and thou of Buber is right. We are becoming together. When it comes to the sacred purpose, people are very attached to outcomes. We talked about this last week. Questions like, will I succeed or will I fail, get in the way of bringing forth what is living within us. Do not worry about outcomes. Success or failure. This is from the sermon last week. Success or failure is not the purpose of your calling. It is better to fail while trying to live into the sacred purpose of your life than to succeed at someone else's, right? Better to fail at being a Jedi than to succeed at being a farmer. Your task is simply to bring as much life force as you can muster to the realization of your Dharma. Each of us has a great work that has been laid down before us by the divine, and we can choose to do it or we can choose not to. We have that ability, right? We talked about this with Denise Levertoff's poem, the angel Gabriel came to Mary and waited. How many people did Gabriel visit before he got to Mary? We don't know because the story doesn't tell us. But did he hit it right on the first try? Maybe. Maybe people said no. We have that choice. No one is forced, although we will suffer if we spend our years fighting who we are. The great work of your life does not mean fame or money or power. It means becoming who you are meant to be. And some of you might be saying, this is the work of younger people. I have already lived my life. What a shame. What a shame. What a shame it would have been if Obi-Wan Kenobi had uttered those words, right? Luke shows up, and Obi-Wan's like, "Whew, kid, I've already done it. I'm retired now." The sacred purpose is not restricted to age. It is available to all who understand themselves as living within a larger field of purpose. What is the sacred purpose of this community, of this congregation? What is your role in helping MVUC become the community that it is called to be in the world? And this represents a bias that I have, of which I have many, but this is a bias I have. I believe that we are called to be a beacon. We are called to be a beacon. Our country is fighting for its soul. It is fighting for its soul. Are we going to choose... Are we going to choose nihilism and fly the plane into the ground? Or are we going to choose life? Are we going to choose death? Or are we going to choose life? This church has a role in being a beacon for those who want to choose life. That's my bias. And you have a role in this fight not only as individuals, least of all, honestly, as individuals, but mostly as a body, as a rebel alliance. Communities also go on journeys in search of their sacred purpose. So the line of the sermon today comes from the Gospel of Thomas. Right? And those of you who are familiar with the Gospel of Thomas, it's one of the Gnostic Gospels that was burned after the Council of Nicaea. They tried to get rid of them. But somebody buried them in the desert, and so now we have some. It's a very Eastern-sounding, it's a very Eastern-sounding gospel. It's quite wonderful. It's mostly sayings of Jesus, and this is one of Jesus' sayings. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. On the individual level, this is some of what I mean when I say when we look out and we see the great sources of suffering and frustration in the world, it is due to people not living into who they are called to be. They are not living, no one is called to be a greedy person. That is not their calling. But there is a lot of it. And it has caused so much pain and suffering. No one is called to be someone who forces others into their rules and opinions. That's not their calling. But we see it all around us. It's also true of institutions. When institutions achieve a certain size or age, a culture shift from the mission that brought them into existence, whatever that mission was, it moves. It goes from we got to do this so that we can solve a problem. We need to create a church here because there's so many people in this area. We need to have a place that a lot of people can go to. Right? And then it shifts from outwardly focused and wanting to live into that mission to, we got to maintain what we have because maybe we're going to die. Every institution does this. It's a grasping, it's a fear-based contraction. And the mission is no longer about changing the world and making people's lives better. It is about making sure that it doesn't die. But the sad truth is when that shift occurs in the culture, it's actually the first step on the path to death. The only thing that keeps any institution alive is nurturing a calling that is relevant to the world, which is often not the same mission that originally brought that institution into existence. To live is to change. The divine is calling through you. It is whispering in your ear just at this moment. It might be saying, God damn, when is Ian going to wrap this up? That's not the divine. I mean, maybe. It is whispering in your ear as you walk these grounds, as you go through life. It is throwing signs at your feet. It is dancing with joy with each step that you take on the spiritual path. Some of you are following your call right now, and it feels right. It feels right even when there are hard days. No journey is without the dark night of the soul where you're like, oh my God, is this what I signed up for? And some of you are like Luke, saying, just one more season. I'm too busy. I don't have enough of whatever. Don't wait for it to burn all the way down if you can help it. We all enter the path as soon as we're able, but I believe with all of my heart that you have a sacred purpose. I believe it's so much. I believe it so much that I gave my life to coming and saying this to you over and over again, right? I have one sermon. You are called to something special. Listen to it. Live it. That's my only sermon. You just get it in new packages. Truly. I'll say it till you believe it, because I believe it. And I believe in you. Last week, we tried on the cloak of our superheroes, and it was a fun exercise that was designed to frame the idea that's highlighted in this passage from the Gospel of Thomas in a more relevant way. What is calling out from within you, right? Some of you were octopuses, and some of you, it was cool. But it was a metaphor. Discover what is there. Nurture that. And your life will feel meaningful. And then we felt the struggle of trying to blend our individual callings into a common mission in that council exercise, which no doubt was a little more difficult, right? Because in our culture, the individual has supremacy over the collective. I want to do my thing my way. And these people are smart, but honestly, I'm a little smarter. That's our culture. There is some value in this when you're trying to break into your own dharma, right? But it's equally as important to learn how to work as a collective if an institution wants to have a mission that keeps it alive. If individualism rules an institution, what that community is called to be cannot be brought forth into the world, and ultimately it's destroyed. Bring forth what is within you. Bring forth what this church is called to be. And you will save not only yourself, you will save all of us. Amen. Please join us. You can rise as you're willing and able for our closing hymn. It is number 131. 131, Love Will Guide Us. Thought I had one more verse. Source of life. Oh wait, do we do the extinguishing first? It's only been 6 months, what do I know? Please join in as we extinguish this chalice. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. Source of life, God, my darling, inspire us as we leave this sacred and special space, this warm and tender community. Go out into the world and witness to the great longing to join the calling. Awaken us to that deep interwovenness, that deep interdependence of all of existence, the space beyond Republican and Democrat, beyond man and woman, beyond old and young, beyond any fence our minds might create, where we are all knit together in the garment of destiny. And fill us with grace, so when the voice of no begins to whisper in our ears, we can say, not today. Today, I am going to listen to the voice of yes. I'm going to choose life. I'm going to choose into the great saving of the world. Go in peace. The service has ended.